the fate of both the people that live here and the people that are offspring from the first people that came here. Their lives are intertwined with the life of this seal. We wouldn't have come here if it wasn't for the seal.
We're microcosm for the rest of the world, because we can see right here on our shorelines the effects of the disconnection from the sacred.
I just love this place so much, and I want to carry it on and have my kids enjoy it as I did. And already they can't. It's different. They'll never see it the way I saw it.
The Pribilof Islands are one of the world's most important areas for marine wildlife. Because of their unique location, they are extremely rich with fish and are the principal breeding grounds for over 1 million northern fur seal, as well as 3 million seabirds. Scientists have referred to the Pribilofs as the Galapagos Islands of the North because of their environmental uniqueness, and naturalists from around the world dream of visiting the islands in the hopes of seeing wildlife they have only had the chance to read about. With growing interest and access to the Pribilofs, there are, however, potential threats to the sustainability of the islands. Many are concerned about how rapidly growing commercial interests, economic development, and modern progress will affect both the inhabitants and wildlife of the area.
Well, the biggest threat, both culturally and in terms of the environment and the animals that live here, is unrestricted and unrestrained development. And that's a hard thing to slow down. This island was based on fur seal harvesting, and it went through 1984. The forces that basically struck down fur seal harvesting never thought out the next step, which was how the island was going to develop without it. And I think the people in the island are still struggling with that also. If you have unrestrained development, you begin to impact the natural resources that are on the island here. It's a small island. It's a small island for the people who live here. It's a small island for the resources like the fur seals and the birds.
Well, there's tremendous change occurring in the Pribilofs right now. It's centered around a new harbors being put in on St. George and St. Paul, and a tremendous increase in the amount of boat traffic and commercial fishing that's centered in the central Bering Sea. And the probability of oil spills is much, much higher, particularly right now in the winter when the real big fisheries occur. Probably the biggest concern that Fish and Wildlife Service has is the introduction of possibility of rats to the island. And rats have been moved by man all over the world, and there's a high likelihood that they would get established on the Pribilofs. And if they did, they would eat a lot of the birds, eat the eggs. They may even transmit diseases to the fur seals, and of course there are health problems related to people and that.
We're rich with, bottom fish, and the fishing companies know that. And it's obvious to us, that they know, because the fleet that comes to St. Paul is getting larger and larger every year. At every opening, it's obvious. More and more boats are coming in. There's big competition. They come in with, big crab pots, big things, they're big time. Fishermen, they come in here and they just about dredge the bottom. And I would have to say that, they may be overfishing the waters, taking the food source, away from the seals and the sea lion.
Well, the biggest threat environmentally to the island is probably dealing with the offshore fueling operations that take place around the island. You got a barge out there with 1 million gallons floating around and fueling up factory trawlers and processors and crab boats. And with the barges sitting out there bobbing out in the ocean, and when our line's breaking loose from the tugboat, there's nothing to stop it from washing ashore with 1 million gallons of diesel fuel.
We have monitored beaches for the presence of oil. There seems to be an increase in tar balls we're finding on the beach. Also last winter there was an oil spill that killed at least several thousand king eiders, birds that winter down here but don't breed on the island. And I think, though, that the number of oil spills reported is much, much less than really occurs, because there is so much open water around the Pribilofs. Most of the fishing activity occurs in the winter when there's extreme storms, and the chances of oil washing ashore, since it's mostly water, is much less than other locations, so it's often not seen.
One of the things that is happening is there is a tremendous amount of industry that is affecting this island and is taking over a lot of the resources of the island. And the only thing that's going to help the island is the younger people getting really involved with the younger and older people, actually everyone getting involved with the control of the industry to try to make a balance between the use of the resources and the preservation of the island with the preservation of the seals and the birds.
As a way to address some of these concerns, the Pribilof Island Stewardship Program was formed. This program offered local organizations such as the Pribilof School District, the City of St. Paul, the tribal government and native corporation, and the National Marine Fisheries Service a chance to come together with a common vision.
Because of the steady flow of newcomers that we have to the island, to the steady flow of new technology, there's just more things happening, and there are more people here making those things happen, and so it's kind of like you have to pass on in a different format how to behave in such a place. And so the stewardship program has come to a position in its time, since its beginning, where we promote environmental etiquette. And we have to have people knowing what's going on, how to take care of this place, and how to steward, such a wonderful environment. The stewardship program did start off as a camp program for young people. And the realization that young people were knowing less about their environment because of this steady flow of other things that they're required to learn, they have to learn. And we could see that that is something that we needed to do, is that we need to continue instilling that know-how and that required etiquette with the people that are here, and at the same time to pass it on to those that are coming to visit.
As visitors come to the islands, it is important that they are aware of how to act so as not to harm any of the local wildlife populations. Undue human disturbances to breeding grounds can have catastrophic effects. Seals may stampede, trampling and killing young pups in their wake.
With all the boats around here, when they park all over the place, I've heard it before myself on radio, where they're out in a storm and stuff, and well, hey, the best place to park's over here by the rookery, So they sit there and park next to the rookeries, and that's not a very good thing.
Disturbances such as planes or boats passing by rookeries may also drive animals from areas that are critical to their survival, as well as disturbing animals, ATVs, or altering vehicles, if driven off established roads, can destroy tundra, which may take decades to grow back.
Well, the elders always say that if we don't take care of this island, the island will be taken away from us. And there's no question about it. That's exactly what will happen. And if the young people want the island to be taken away from us, then forget about taking care of it. And if we want to keep this island with its intense and wonderful multi-dimensional beauty, then work at getting back in touch with the sacred within yourself.
Tons of debris wash up on the shores of the Pribilof Islands every season. Through the stewardship program, young people are combing the beaches for debris and disposing of it properly.
I picked up a raincoat that was down by the shoreline, a piece of rope tied to a floater, and a beach ball, a beer can, and a plastic thing. I don't even know what it is.
I would have to say, honestly say that there is more and more fishing gear, nets. I mean, there are nets out there with skates on them sometimes, and these are hooks the longlanders use. I mean, they're out there by yards, and you know, it's out there. I've seen it many times.
We're out here cleaning up the beach because whenever it gets a little just too dirty, no one really cares to just pick it up. So we're here now just picking it up because it's dirty and we're camping and just we don't like it.
Some of the things that we've seen that the younger people are getting a first-hand view of is environmental pollution. Because some of the younger people have helped us collect toxicological samples, and they've also helped us to collect oiled pelts, because we have found some of the fur seals that have been oiled, and we have found that this is associated with spilling of bilge and possibly other types of oil spills. And so they're seeing this, and even the older people at the harvest are seeing this more and more now, and they're getting more concerned about their environment. So working with both the older people and with the younger people, it's making them open their eyes to the consequences of industry without control of industry.
The pollution going into the water is pretty messed up because us Aleut people and the other people around Alaska eat off their land, especially seal meat and halibut and crab. And stuff that goes into water is just killing them. And it hurts the people to see them all die and just end up on the land. And then after that, everybody starts complaining about what's going on in the water and what's happening to their subsistence.
As well as learning about environmental pollution, young people who mentored with scientists through the Stewardship program got to observe and learn about fur seal behavior.
He's come down that far.
Yeah, he's down there right now, or he was earlier.
Yeah, he's up there now. So he's taken over Split Spot. And did you get the time when he left?
Yeah. 1730.
1730, excellent, okay.
I lived up here all my life, but I really never studied or really looked at seals closely, and this was the first time I noticed how they behaved and really learned about them.
The other thing that we've done through the Stewardship program is to work at disentangling seals with people involved in collecting information regarding entangled seals. And that is something that I think that we need to know, because we do have quite a few animals that come to St. Paul, the fur seals that come to St. Paul, and there are birds. And they come ashore in nets, and you know, I wouldn't want a net around myself, and I don't think anybody else would either. And so you have to figure out a way to deal with that type of situation. And so luckily we've had people involved in Western science that have done that. And by working together, we now have younger people aware of what's going on, and young people that now know how to, the process that they need to go through to disentangle a seal. And with both of those things, they may not realize it, but they're working together.
We began working with the community on disentanglement research during the 1993 and 94 seasons when we weren't actively surveying for entanglement. We began working on the harvest to simply catch any entangled animals and get the debris off them. And that gave me a real insight into the concern that people in the community have for the welfare of the seals and the status of the population. And that was sort of the driving force behind merging our entanglement surveys with the subsistence harvest and getting people in, or asking people in the community to help us to do the entanglement roundup separate from the harvest as well. How a roundup works is we'll herd together a group of seals on a hauling ground, a group of subadult males, and release them in a
slow way such that we can count the number of seals we're releasing and capture any entangled seals observed during that roundup. As entangled seals are released from the group, they're captured using a noose pole, basically a loop of rope at the end of a pole, and we'll use that to restrain their necks and transfer them onto a restraint board where we can handle them safely for both the seal and the people disentangling them.
Fucker. It's the wrong one.
It's way in there. Jason.
The reason why I worked with the disentanglement group this year was because I love animals, and seeing stuff around their neck is a bad thing because it's kind of a painful thing for everybody. It just leaves a bunch of scars.
I do not like seeing the animals being entangled in nets and all the other debris, and so I thought I'd help out the biologists and do the disentanglement.
One of the reasons I think it's important for us to be doing disentanglement work is because I know for a fact there are still people in St. Paul that depend on the seal they get in the summer to carry them through the winter.
Through Stewardship program, our kids, will learn on how to deal with tragedies, like this. Be on top of it, just don't walk by it and leave it. You learn how to take the animals out, without causing any further trauma or, stress or shock, and learn how to get rid of the net and not just leave it there. Maybe drag it out of there, take it someplace in a safe place, dispose of it properly.
Most of the entangling debris that we find on seals is related to the fishing industry operating in the North Pacific and Bering Sea. And having worked for several years on these ships, I was able to see that some of the debris comes overboard accidentally, and a lot of it is also introduced through basically carelessness, and it doesn't need to be introduced into the marine environment. And with the longevity of the plastics that most of these materials are made of, that debris stays around for quite a while. And I think the importance of demonstrating what this type of debris can do to fur seals, it's pretty clear to me from seeing the reactions of people involved in the surveys we're doing and people we've taken out to disentangle seals at different points in time. It's a very emotional thing to see an animal badly wounded in a piece of marine debris. If more people were able to see the effect that marine debris can have on fur seals, that as much debris would be introduced into the marine environment.
Yeah, and as a fisherman, I guess the last thing I'd want to see is a seal, entangled in any kind of marine debris. You have to remember that we're fishing, 100, 200 miles away from the Pribilofs oftentimes, and a piece of web we're working on might get washed over at night when they've turned our back, a wave comes up. And we're usually in the Pribilofs in the winter, in the late fall. The seals don't come to the summer, so we rarely see the impact of what could happen from some of our marine debris going overboard. We often try as hard as we can to keep everything on the boat, to wait till we get on shore and use, the proper dumpster facilities. But sometimes, we never, by not seeing the impact of our actions, we can become lax. And I think that's why it's important for projects like this, just so we, can be constantly reminded of what can happen if we allow, our web to go overboard, if we allow packing bans, whatever.
There are all sorts of debris found on seals, not all of it as a result of the fishing industry. The common denominator is size. Seals are curious animals, and any debris that will slip over their head has a high likelihood of entangling them. Miscellaneous debris such as loops of string, gaskets, and plastic bags from the local grocery store, as well as fishing nets, crab pot bait bags, and plastic packing bands used to package fish on processors are all threats to the seal.
The Pribilofs are like a magnet. It attracts the fish, it attracts the seals, and therefore attracts the commercial industry. It first attracted the fur seal harvesters, now it's attracting the commercial fisheries. So the industry needs to realize that this is a beautiful place and it does have a very sensitive environment. And when they are out there fishing, they need to understand that everything they do out there does have an impact on the community.
The opportunity for industry in the Pribilofs is so great that those operations which are second class, kind of like the Rusty Bucket ships, should be excluded. I think some kind of way that the cream of the crop should be here. We need to have kind of a higher standard of doing business, and for the long term that'll be the best for the industry, it'll be best for the wildlife, and certainly for the community.
We've had some very positive things that have happened through the Stewardship program, and now we have a lot of young people that are saying, I'd like to be a marine mammal biologist. We've had fishing companies come forward, people off of fishing boats come forward and help us to clean up the beaches. And it's great because I think it lends to people feeling better about each other, for one thing. I did go through a period of time there where I kind of wanted to denounce the fishing industry, you know, never eat crab because it's all of this stuff that's happening. But I realized that that's not a healthy way of dealing with it. And so I also realized that human beings don't intentionally do this type of stuff. They don't intentionally just toss up a net on a beach. And they don't intentionally throw a net around a seal's neck. It's not their intention. And so that kind of makes you forgive the process. And by doing that, then you can work together to combat the problems that arise from people doing things without really thinking about what could happen.
Over the last decade, the overall rate of seals entangled in marine debris has decreased. According to surveys, part of this success is due to a reduction in the number of fishing nets that find their way overboard. While there is still a huge concern over marine debris entangling seals, this finding is a positive message that education and changing human behavior as a solution to this problem is possible.
I've grown to see that there's magic on this island in many, many different forms. And we can learn from it so much about how to live. And part of the things that the elders talk about is a reverse society where we used to teach how to live, and today we teach how to make a living. And if we watch carefully, if we develop the patience within ourselves to be able to sit and watch and observe any aspect of this island, we learn the universe.
There was an Aleut man named Igadaga who came to St. Paul prior to the Russians coming, and when he had gone back to his village on the Aleutian chain, he had told his relatives that anyone that ever had been to this island, and he called it Tanagamich, which is land of mother's brother, that if one goes to Tanagamich and they leave it, that they always carry in their heart a longing to return.